It's October and I'm revisiting some of my favorite horror franchises, so today, let's rank all 9 Nightmare on Elm Street movies from worst to best. Hey everybody, my name is Justin here. I try to watch everything that hits theaters and on streaming services. If you guys are like me, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below and click that bell notification for more up and coming content. I've wanted to rank the Nightmare on Elm Street films for quite some time, and every year as October approaches, I put it on my calendar and I never get to it. But this year, I planned ahead and I watched all the Nightmare on Elm Street films. So leave your list down below. How would you rank all 9 of the films from worst to best? Coming in last place is Freddys Dead. This has a really interesting idea, and they do continue to add a lot to Freddy Krueger's backstory. He had a daughter. We get to see him as Freddy Krueger, not as this nightmare, but as a human, and it just adds a little more depth to that character. But a lot of it is not entertaining. They take a lot of what makes Freddy Krueger so terrifying in the previous films and strips that away within this movie. There's a lot of just really dumb kill sequences. Wizard of Oz one in the beginning, he's playing video games. There's a lot of moments that you just don't feel that Freddy Krueger is terrifying. And then on top of that, the acting's really bad. The story doesn't flow very nicely. It's boring at times. It take a pretty interesting idea and don't really seem to expand so much on it. And on top of that, he's not very terrifying, and it's just way too comical, where Freddy Krueger has had like this nice balance of being terrifying and funny at times, but here it's just absolutely bad. Coming in at number 8 is Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. This one also has a unique premise for it that's not expanded on. It doesn't feel like there's much growth for Freddy within this film. They explore a little more of Amanda Krueger in here, which is always nice to see. Alice returns from the 4th film, and she has an unborn child that Freddy is trying to use to be born again into the real world. They take a lot of elements from the 3rd and 4th film to make this film feel very unoriginal compared to what we've already seen in the franchise. You can start to tell that this franchise is starting to lose its steam, its originality with this film and Freddys Dead. It's not as entertaining or as violent or funny as the previous entries in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So when you get to the 5th film, they start to have these cool ideas on top of the movie, but they just don't work. The way that the film is structured and the performances, they try to be too funny and not as serious, and they take these good ideas and don't really make it work. Going from the 3rd film to the 4th film and now the 5th film, it seems like it's the same thing done over and over again. Freddy Krueger still once again is a lot of fun. Robert Englund is perfect as Freddy Krueger. Still has a kind of nice balance of comedy and horror to the movie. There are some pretty decent kills within here, but there's not much in this movie to make it feel different compared to other films. Coming in at number 7 is A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010. This is the remake that looks pretty good. The production behind it all and the direction, it feels very grounded compared to other films. Jackie Earle Haley does a passable job as Freddy Krueger. It's more grounded in its approach when it comes to dreams. The performances are pretty good within the film, and there are some bloody sequences, but it lacks that charm that the original Nightmare on Elm Street had. The way that the vibe was for that first film and how creepy it was, that's not really within this movie. It feels like a modern horror film that forgets what made that first original film so good. And I do appreciate the way that this film looked and the more grounded approach to it, but when you compare both films, it's easy to see why this wasn't that successful. And then on top of that, taking what made Freddy Krueger so terrifying, it's in here, but they make him into a child rapist, which is really disturbing to watch and just doesn't sit well with me. And so they start to shift a little bit of the backstory to Freddy and he's now targeting the children that possibly were lying about what had happened. He's trying to get revenge on them. It's not a story that I find to be that interesting compared to the previous film. Coming in at number 6 is A Nightmare on Elm Street 4: The Dream Master. This film really irritated me in the first 30 minutes. They take the characters from the third film and kill them off really early on. And those were interesting characters that made Nightmare on Elm Street 3 a lot of fun. And they traded them in for characters I just did not find to be interesting. They replaced Patricia Arquette in the film with Tuesday Night, and nowhere near as interesting as Patricia Arquette's performance. And just the film feels like a rehash of the third film. Utilizing people's abilities to overpower Freddy Krueger in the dreams. You have Freddy Krueger, the bad, the nightmares, and then you have these characters that can do good things and utilize their powers. That's still explored within the fourth film, but it just feels like it's the same structure, the same thing the second time around, where the third film started to utilize people's powers. There was a wizard, people were strong, and in the fourth film it just feels like the same exact thing, just not as entertaining. So when it comes to Nightmare on Elm Street 4, there are some fun moments in here because I do like the third film and I do like some parts of the fourth film, but it does lack a clear different direction compared to that third movie. So the Dream Master fails to be original, but still it's a pretty fun film. Coming in at number 5 is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2: Freddy's Revenge. I do applaud them for trying to do something different compared to the first film. In this one, our character is turning into Freddy. And with that, it's hard to really latch onto one character and cheer somebody on as they are fighting against Freddy Krueger, since he is slowly starting to turn into Freddy Krueger. I like the 80s look to it and some of the pop culture references. It's got like an 80s vibe to it that makes it entertaining to watch. And I do like that they took it into a different direction. It wasn't like the same thing done again, but I really didn't find the characters in here to be all that memorable or even likable as well. So Freddy's a lot of fun, but he takes a step back for most of the film since he is trying to control this young kid that lives in Nancy's house, and he's trying to do what he does, get back into the real world. And so with that character, him being controlled, it's not a character that you could really kind of cheer on and root for. It's just a film that is just kind of moving along. There's really no like deep structure to it. Nothing really that terrifying compared to that first movie. Coming at number 4 is New Nightmare. This is a breath of fresh air. I absolutely love this film. It's a really clever idea. It stars Wes Craven and Robert Englund and Heather Langenkamp playing themselves. And then Heather Langenkamp starts to have these dreams and phone calls from Freddy, and he starts to be part of the movie. It's a really clever idea, and you can start to see kind of some similarities between this and Scream, which Wes Craven did direct as well. The phone calls, I think some of the daylight sequences when it comes to utilizing horror and daytime and make it terrifying as well was very strong within the Scream franchise. So this movie felt very different, and I really did like it. Robert Englund once again is terrifying as Freddy. I think we could have used a little more of Freddy throughout the film. Wes Craven within the film working on the script, which is the movie itself. There's a lot of fun references to the Nightmare on Elm Street, and I like how Heather was playing herself, but then also Nancy at times. After Freddys Dead, we brought back this movie, but it was a interesting and new way to bring the franchise without beating it on its head and doing like the same thing over and over again. It was a fresh idea that definitely did work. Coming in at number 3 is Freddy vs. Jason. I love this film. It's one of my favorite films growing up. I remember first time watching it, I think I was in 5th grade, and at that time I had not watched a previous Nightmare on Elm Street film or a Friday the 13th film. So that was like my first exposure to both franchises. And now watching both franchises multiple times and this movie, it does incorporate a lot of both franchises into the movie in a very successful way. The film is pretty clever as well, with Freddy Krueger trying to go into Jason Voorhees' dreams and try to kill kids on Elm Street to bring back that fear of Freddy Krueger is pretty interesting. The early 2000s feel to it is there. It's heavily stylized with it. It's a blast. I have a lot of nostalgia for this movie. I enjoyed it as a kid and I still enjoy it as an adult. The battles between Freddy and Jason is really entertaining. There are some really bloody sequences in here, and I like Jason and Freddy both within this movie and how they fought against each other. There's a lot of entertaining moments, and it takes the best elements of both franchises and puts them within this movie to make it a really fun early 2000s slasher film. Coming in second place is A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. This was a fun movie. I haven't seen this movie in a few years, and I remember how much I had a blast with this movie. Taking an already good idea from Nightmare on Elm Street and just adding something else to it. By having the characters that can do things within their dreams rather than just being chased by Freddy, they are able to fight back. They are able to use powers. And that makes so much sense. When you're in your own dreams, you do things that you can't do in real life. Sometimes you have very real dreams, and then you have just really bizarre dreams. And it makes so much sense to have the characters within their dreams to be a wizard, to be very strong, to fight off against Freddy Krueger. And they really just go all in with that, with some really memorable, iconic kills in the franchise, especially with like the puppet on top of the tower. There are so many scenes that really stand out and just take what made that first film work so well and just adding more to it. And with memorable, likable characters, you feel like they had a fair chance of fighting against Freddy Krueger. So Dream Warriors, I liked it. I like that they took what made that first film work so well and just kind of expand already on the world of Freddy Krueger and giving us some really terrifying moments. But coming in first place is A Nightmare on Elm Street. The Wes Craven directed film is one of the best horror movies of all time. It's so subtle with a lot of its scares that the progression for it becomes more terrifying as it goes along, because characters are trying to stay awake, and the more that they get tired, the more Freddy Krueger is within the film and terrorizing the teenagers on Elm Street. So a lot of these really subtle moments of Freddy coming through the walls over the bed or his claws in the bathtub, really simple scenes that are truly terrifying within the franchise. Robert Englund had that nice balance of being silly, but also terrifying as well. Having a lot of one-liners that worked. How he delivers the horror moments in here is a reason why he's one of the best horror movie characters of all time. Nancy is one of the best characters in a horror movie as well. There's so much in here that's bloody with practical effects and terrifying moments from Wes Craven. I wish he would have continued on with the franchise, directing at least maybe the first 3 or 4 films, because his style is so good in here that feels like it's missing from a lot of its sequels. There's many films that tried to match what made that first film work so well, Dream Warriors, but they failed on it. Wes Craven's style is so good within this movie. It's subtle, it's creepy. The use of Freddy Krueger lurking in the background, that what makes it so creepy to watch. It stood the test of time, and to this day, it's still a really popular film and one of my all-time favorites. So there you guys have it, all 9 Nightmare on Elm Street movies ranked worst to best. How would you rank them? Let me know in the comment section down below, and stay tuned for more up-and-coming content like this. My name is Justin Watches Movies, and you guys stay classy, YouTube.